Awesome. All right. Well, everyone that might be in here, you might notice that we're on a little bit early. That's because we got something special going on again. We have a good friend of the show, Vikram, from Planthropology Podcast, and he's going to interview us for his show. But we figured, heck, why not throw it onto the live show so that we can just have extra content, more stuff.
Yeah, and everyone, we've talked about Planthropology before on our show, but if you haven't checked it out yet, you should. It's a great show.
100%.
Well, I appreciate that.
And then I'm going to hit record here, and then we can just start whenever you want. Maybe we'll take 10 seconds, make sure there's any room noise that you want to take out later.
Okay. All right. Well, we are up and running with another interesting episode of the Planthropology Podcast. And, listening to this whenever this comes out, this is kind of irrelevant to you at this point, but we're actually live streaming this on the Facebook group of my two guests. And I'm hosting a watch party because technology is ridiculous.
Yes.
So we had like all kinds of workarounds and all of that. So I'm here with Kirk and Zach from the Podcast Discovery Show. How are y'all doing today?
Doing great.
Doing good.
Yeah.
Doing really good.
We're really excited to get to talk to you. It's been great meeting you and then finding your show and everything like that. So yeah, we were pumped when you heard you wanted to talk to us.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because like I've gotten to interview quite a few podcasters recently, and what's cool is so many of this like little podcast group we're in that I've discovered on Twitter and everywhere else. Because I think we kind of got connected on Twitter through Paul Chomo from the Varmints podcast, which you should also be listening to.
100%.
But like, there's a lot of plant people in this group that do podcast stuff. And so one of the reasons I wanted to talk to y'all is because y'all are with a really cool company called True Algae. And I know very little about algae except that they're kind of plants and kind of not. And
yeah.
So
you're not wrong.
So we'll talk about that here in just a little bit as we kind of get into this. But so why don't y'all kind of introduce yourselves a little bit more? Tell me about your background and I guess tell our guests how you got into doing plant stuff.
Kirk, you want to go first? Because you're the one who's like had the life of plant stuff for sure.
So I was actually going to college to become a pastor, and that's what I was going to do. I was at Liberty University. I wasn't going to be a pastor. I wanted to be an aviator, like flying missionaries in and out of like third world countries and stuff like that. But then life hit, and me and my wife, she went with me to college. She followed me up there. We were dating since high school, and she didn't like the college life. I enjoyed it a lot. But so I ended up moving back home for her. And it's kind of hard to do a distance learning for aviation classes. So I pivoted, and essentially my dad had a plant nursery at the time, took over the plant nursery, and basically was ornamentals and stuff like that. But that was right at the beginning of the housing market crash, and there was no business in that because people aren't building houses, they're not landscaping. And so we did another pivot, and I was like, hey, Pop, people got to eat. And so I actually started farming. I actually started with 1/2 acre of squash. That was the first time I ever farmed anything, and I got the bug so hard. I will say I didn't know anything about farming starting it, and I grew that 1/2 acre, and I don't think the price went below like $30 a box that year. And apparently that was maybe the best squash year in history.
That's how they get you.
Dude, I'm gonna become a millionaire. I'm gonna turn this whole property into farm, and I'm just gonna grow squash. It's so easy. And I don't think I ever got a price above like $20 after that, and as low as like $5. Anyway, long story short, I farmed for almost 7 years, and ended up getting all the way up to. I mean, it's still relatively small farm. I got up to 30 acres, about 2 different locations, but I was always growing something. I had different crops. I didn't just have 30 acres planted in one thing. I would have, okra in the summer, cucumbers and squash in the fall, in the spring, and strawberries in the winter, and onions with them. And we did everything. We did so many different crops. So I did that for a long time. Got hit with one really bad strawberry season, and strawberries are uh, very capital heavy, especially at the beginning of the season, and it
For
takes
sure.
a lot to get your money back. And it was a very bad year for production and for the market. And a lot around here, it's kind of a thing. You see who goes out of business. Well, that was a year that I went out of business, and I had to pivot. And I worked for a few small things from there, like another farm or somewhere else. But I was always in the realm of agriculture. Eventually, I ended up at a ag research company called Pacific Ag Research. This branch was Florida Ag Research, and we did trials for big companies and small companies that would make any sort of biological or chemical or fungicide, anything. I mean, just anything, and up to like plastics and stuff like that. Anything that do with agriculture, they would trial it for them.
Yeah.
And through there, which was an amazing job, it was really cool. I was going all over the place. I was going to do a lot of citrus trials. I do all the applications and stuff like that. I do all the evaluations, and I learned a lot. But I met this Korean guy by doing one of his trials on watermelons. And his product was, he called it clopia because it was chlorella.
Hmm.
And his method of growing it was, he called it a utopia for chlorella. So he called it clopia. It was funny because no one ever pronounced it right.
They did
because
not
it's
ever.
TH. So you're like chlopia, and some of the farmers around here are like, that sounds like a venereal disease.
No, I don't want that. Don't sell me that.
Yeah.
Exactly. But so he had this product, and I'm not gonna lie, I'd seen so many of the products that I'd been trialing, and a lot of times I didn't see any results at all. And I was actually seeing something going on in his watermelons, and a substantial bit of growth. They were sweeter watermelons. It was a lot of things, and I'm like, how are you getting this from algae? I'm a farmer, and I would never have believed this. This doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
And of course, you had all these reasons and stuff like that. Long story short, which it's already been pretty long, he's like, I can only be in the U.S. for 3 months, and I have to go back to Korea. Do you have anybody that you know that you trust that might be able to run the company here in Florida while I'm gone? And I'm like, I'll send you a friend or two. So I sent him a friend. The guy he never worked outside, and he's like, I don't think I can do that. And I asked him finally, I'm like, okay, well, how much are you willing to pay? He told me the number, and I'm like, okay. I did the math in my head. I'm like, that's almost double what I'm making right now at this research company. I think I might ask him if he'll hire me. And at first he didn't want to because it's kind of a conflict of interest. You work for the company, and I'm like, look, I'm willing to if you'll think about it. He really liked me, and I was actually the first paid employee for the company. We were tiny. It was me in a greenhouse almost the size of this office. It was tiny. He had built it himself with like a welder that was this big and some metal he bought at Home Depot. And that's where he started. He had brought 3 small units that we could make 30 gallons of product per day. And that was it. And so he left, and I took over I watched everything while he was out at, back in Korea, because the CEO who he had hired, it was in Virginia. He was the guy that he had picked to kind of run the money end of it here in the U.S. And so I was the first paid employee for True Algae way back in the day. It was almost 3 years ago now.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That's an interesting story. And it's funny that he was like, okay, I'm leaving the country, and I need someone to do this for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, but it's cool that he finally decided to hire you, because that's a lot of trust, right? Like to say, okay, I'm going to try to run this company from literally the other side of the world,
Hmm.
like literally the other side of the planet.
Yeah, and it is still difficult because when we're working, he's sleeping, and it's the opposite, time, and it's sometimes it's still complicated,
Hmm.
but yeah, it was really neat, and it was a risk because my wife's like, this is a tiny company, it's a startup, what if it doesn't take off? And you've got a good job now, you got insurance and stuff like that. I'm like, life is risks. You just got to take them sometimes. I'm
Yeah.
like, worst case scenario, it looks good because I'm working for a biotech company. It looks awesome on my resume.
Yeah.
So Zach, how did you get plugged in with all this? What's your background
Yeah,
like?
and I have a finance degree, and while I was in school, I was working for a real estate company who set up essentially an angel fund. So think under $25,000 angel fund type grants and loans and things like that.
Okay.
And I kind of just caught the bug for startups in general, for kind of that life of trying to theory craft how to build out a business and try and find people who have ideas they're passionate about and turn that into something that can make them money. And so I kind of got into that for a long time. And there was a long time where I kind of just was like, no, we need to do something more like traditional, find something that there's not that kind of risk involved. But then I just kept doing the same thing. I kept going back to it. I kept going back to startups and things like that. And the last one I worked for before True Algae was there was an internet type startup. They wanted to democratize the internet, and I firmly believed in the entire idea behind it and everything like that. But there was just some executive execution problems, is maybe a way to say it diplomatically, that it ended up
I
making
like
me
that.
look around. And I've known Kirk. We went to high school together. We've known each other forever. And so I knew what he was up to, and I was like, "Hey, are you guys looking for people?" I kind of do whatever needs to be done at startups, and that was kind of my thing there. So I didn't have necessarily like an ag background. I was always more of a hobbyist. I did always appreciate having plants around me and like being able to grow them and things like that. And one of the things that I did when I was fresh out of college, that it still kind of messes with me, I had established we've seen the rise of like tiny homes right now. And so about when I was right out of college, so like 2011, I had no idea how to do anything. And I essentially built out this whole business plan of shipping container homes that would be off grid and have like food forests and stuff built around it and all of these types of things. And now I see it taking off, and it's like, oh man, if I knew what I was doing even a little bit, I could have been way ahead of this curve. But yeah, no, I was always just interested in kind of growing things around me. And then also, I always appreciated forward thinking green technologies as well. So then I talked to Kirk a little bit about kind of what the company was about, and it just seemed to tick a lot of the boxes. So I've learned a lot more about kind of the plant world since then. But I did at one point work on Kirk's farm with him too. So it was one of those things that I dabbled in a little bit, but now I'm in it.
Yeah, no, it sounds like. I mean, I hope so, right?
Yeah.
Because you're doing the thing, and man, it's like I hear these stories a lot, and y'all's I think is really interesting, because I've um on the show we've talked to lots of like academics and stuff like that are like, oh, I started in this major and then I changed into plant major. I mean, that's kind of what I did, but I like that y'all have kind of I like getting the kind of the industry perspective on all of this, right? Because you've been in the trenches, right? You've done the work in farming, you've done the work in finance, and so it's like it sounds like through your lives and careers, you've kind of like been collecting all the pieces you needed for this really cool business, and it's interesting to see how life works out sometimes, I think, and just and it's weird because like as you're going through some of this stuff, you don't really see the big picture. It's like you build skills, you build all these things, and eventually it turns into something new and something different. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Like you said, life works in crazy ways, and a lot of times you're like, what's going on? This doesn't feel like I'm being successful or anything. I worked at that farm for 7 years, my farm, and after that, I think I had like 4 jobs in the matter of 2 years, and
Yeah.
I felt so horrible because I was like, I just can't. I'm not doing what I want to do, and I feel like I'm not being successful. But during that, I worked at a farm that had 600 acres, and I was running as many as up to like 300 people at a time managing. And then I got a job offer at a plant nursery, which was 100 acres of nursery, and inside citrus, they had 40 acres of greenhouse inside citrus, and I was a citrus manager. And then they cut budget and fired all the managers, and I was like, well, I'm back on my butt again. And that's when I started working for the research company. So when in ag, I've farmed myself, I've ran farms or managed farms, and then I've worked in the nursery / citrus part, and I've worked in the research, and all of it came together to where I'm at now. And I'm like, I felt like such a failure, but I was getting experience in all of these different facets of agriculture that most people will only touch one, and I was
Yeah.
able to get experience in all of them.
Well, and that's such a good message, because that's something we talk about a lot on the show is like, okay, you've studied agriculture, you've got your shiny new bachelor's of science degree in hand. What do you do? And I think that a lot of, and I don't want to like say that a lot of people do this, but something that I think I did coming out of school was like, okay, this is what I have studied, this is what my degree is in, and this is what I'm going to do, and that's the way my life has to go. But I think a good message for not just students, but anyone getting into business and getting into the industry is that just it's okay to just kind of do everything, right? It's okay to even though it sucks in the moment sometimes, like that string of like 4 jobs in 2 years probably taught you a whole heck of a lot, that kind of drives you forward. So I think that's such a good message to send, that it's like, don't get discouraged sometimes when some of this weird stuff happens. It's like, no, it's just preparing you for the next thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think all of these things add a piece to your experience in general, and you end up benefiting from it, even if it's uncomfortable at the time, for sure.
Yeah. So I'm trying to decide which one I want to tackle first, podcast or algae.
No, and that's another one of those things like you were talking about, where we have been podcasting for a long time, and now we have the opportunity to start one that's kind of work partnered and do something that's along the same lines. So it's just some little thing that we had always done for a hobby for a long time now, and it ended up being something that we are now able to turn into something we're doing that's going to be a cool message point for True Algae as well.
For sure. Well, so let's start with the podcast discovery show then. How did this come about? Because y'all are like hundreds of episodes in at this point, right? Like you're pretty deep into this thing.
Yes, we are actually part of the reason we had you recommend one is because we're like, we have to be at about 100 episodes. We should do like a special thing. And so we kind of guesstimated, but then Kirk looked on Spotify. I think we're over 200, correct?
Yeah, that's why we did 100-ish. I was going to say, Zach, we've been saying let's do our 100 celebration for almost a year.
Yeah. I think that's the main issue is we hesitated on the actual execution of it.
So
but yeah,
we've been filling it as the 100-ish celebration.
That's really fun. I mean, that's really funny because like I'm early enough in this that I like, I'm still at the point where like I can name all my like podcast episodes, but at some point it's just like, yeah, I think I talked about that at I don't know, maybe.
Yeah. Oh yes.
So how did this show start? Because it's just as an overview, it's a really cool show where the guys listen to different podcasts across genres and across like themes and all kinds of stuff, and then discuss it on their show. And an episode of I was pretty early in podcasting when I got a message from y'all saying, "Hey, we're gonna talk about your show," and I was like, "Really? People listen to this? I had no idea." And so how did that start? How'd you come up with the idea?
So it kind of just came out with, I was the one that just listened to and I still do listen to a ridiculous amount of podcasts, just like an embarrassingly large amount of hours devoted to listening to podcasts. When I wake up in the morning, when I'm taking a shower, when I'm brushing my teeth, I always listen to a podcast. I don't even listen to music hardly anymore. It's just podcasts. And especially when I was farming, I was on a tractor for so many hours all by myself, and that was my company, was podcasts. So I would always, when I would hang out with my buddies, Zach and Josh, I would be the one to be like, "Hey, did you hear about this podcast?" And then Zach and Josh both listened to a few, and Josh would be like, "Well, did you listen to this one?" And so we just started doing this back and forth. And I'm like, man, it'd be cool to have a podcast one day ourselves. I had wanted to do it forever, but we had no clue where to even start. And we're like, well, let's just do a podcast about podcasts. I think my first name for it was the podcast, which was glad that one didn't stick. But that's where it started. And then we kind of built a little bit of a broader discovery when we brought on the other discovery show where we talk about a lot of the other things we discovered, not just podcasts. But yeah, that's where we got the ideas, just bouncing off each other, new awesome episodes of podcasts that we had listened to.
That's fun. Go ahead.
I think we both just really appreciate discovering new stuff. And Kirk loves podcasts so much that anytime he hears about a new one, he loves it. He will binge listen to it over a weekend, and then we're on to the next one. And it's the same thing with kind of anything else. It's I've done a spinoff show based on music. We have the other Discovery show that's based on just anything else that we think is cool that we've discovered throughout the week. So it's been a really fun thing to just kind of have that constant search going on.
That's really cool. So okay, you mentioned that you messaged me a couple days ago or a couple weeks ago. Time has no meaning anymore. Like
Sure.
it's one.
It hasn't. This entire year is in its own special category.
Yeah, we're like in some kind of weird bubble where it's been one long freaking day since March, and it's just meaningless. But like y'all had asked me to recommend a show, and I was like, I pulled out my phone and I was like, okay. I have like 80 podcasts that I'm subscribed to. How do I? And I'm not caught up on literally any of them. Sure. Because it's impossible. So I was scrolling through and I ended up recommending Petri Dish. Sean's a Twitter podcast friend and runs a really interesting, I think, fun show. And also had to go back like through your catalog and make sure you hadn't already talked about it. Mm-hmm. How do y'all pick shows? Is it just literally just, oh, I found this week? Do you take mostly recommendations? Is it just a mix of everything?
Honestly, we very rarely take recommendations because it's one of those things where we didn't want to get to that place where just anybody who sent us a message online would get their own episode. We felt like that kind of defeats the purpose.
Right.
And we also didn't want to do a review show in the traditional sense where we would roast shows that were bad, because I feel like that's a lot of times what they turn into, because it's funny to talk about how bad something is. But we always wanted to go into the other side of that, where every show that we brought to the podcast would be a show that whoever brought it really liked. And so it's more highlighting things we liked, not trying to beat down on things that were not as in our wheelhouse. And so a lot of times we would try and mix it up. Like I feel like each one of us kind of had our own category we would constantly do. So when Josh was on the show, there was a lot of tech and a lot of kind of understanding how data works and things like that. Kirk loves narratives. He also realizes that narratives are sometimes hard to talk about on the show.
Right.
So he mixes it up. And I would do a lot of music and movies and things like that. But then we got the idea, the first time we did this was a couple years ago now, where we ask other people, because sometimes it's better to get out of our own kind of wheelhouse and really mix it up. And the best way to do that is just to talk to other people that we've met through Twitter and everything like that. Because like you said, the podcast community is really cool and it's really fun to communicate with everybody. And you can get really different perspectives that way. So that was part of the reason we wanted to do this whole thing, is so we could just mix it up a little bit.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And like, and a comment I was going to make that I had actually written down to make before we got started is I like the tone of your show, because I've heard quite a few podcasts, like you mentioned, that like they just crap on other podcasts a lot, and it gets kind of frustrating, right? Or just like whatever is recommended. But one thing that struck me even when I first started listening to y'all's show is like, even if one of y'all didn't necessarily like the episode or whatever that you listened to, you're always like really kind about it, right? It wasn't just like, this is crap. It was like, no, I see why you recommend it. There was and I don't remember now what you were reviewing, but
it's definitely happened though.
Mm-hmm. Oh, really?
Oh, no, not that we've been mean to him, but what you're talking about has definitely happened. Where one of us is like, I'm not gonna crap on this.
Right. Well, yeah, no, it's because it could be hard to do too, because if you were like, man, I really did not like this.
Yeah.
There was one episode I listened to, and I can't remember now what it was, that it was either like a paranormal or true
Okay.
crime
Oh,
or something.
you've already explained plenty. Both me and Kirk know exactly what you're talking about. We know exactly who hated it because literally my brother hated every Halloween because me and Kirk were like, oh, it's Halloween. Let's bring in some spooky episodes, like, oh, we'll talk about. And there was one of them we talked about. Was it the one that they tried to like go at it kind of skeptically and try and disprove it as they did it?
Maybe so.
Yeah, there was one that I was like, okay, if any spooky podcast is going to be okay for Josh, it's this one where they want to be skeptical and they want to go science first, and like first choice is, can science explain this?
Sure.
Still hated it, but he
Still not in.
he just didn't like the entire genre.
But even in that, like, y'all's conversation was not like negative. He was just like, nope, not for me, not doing it. But like, he was not mean about
Yeah.
it, right? He was
Yeah.
just like, okay, I'm not going to listen to this after today or whatever. But
And I think there's some element of everybody has different personality types and different things they're looking for in entertainment. That's one of the things that, like, it's really easy to, even with TV shows, you see something that you don't relate to and it's easy to talk trash about, or you can realize that that's not for you, but maybe it wasn't supposed to be, or maybe it's fine that it's for someone else. It's more about finding that thing that connects with you and being passionate about it, not dumping on anybody else's passions.
And it also helps that we've been on this side of the microphone.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so
For sure.
we know that we would have been roasted and probably still deserve to be roasted compared to a lot of people.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, okay, not to put you on the spot, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to, like, single anything out. Is there a favorite discovery that the two of y'all have made? I know there's been a lot, so it's
On
maybe
a
hard to narrow down.
podcast?
Yeah.
Oh, we've talked about, and it's hardly a discovery on someone, but there's a couple that we listen to. Anytime we listen to them, we'll do it anytime. So like Ologies is a great show. Anytime I will listen to Ologies. I can't remember. I think that was Josh brought Ologies.
Yeah.
Song Exploder, basically anything that NPR does, all incredible. Honestly, like it's really fun to just try new stuff too, because it's crazy because we listen to so much podcasts that it's almost, it's like you said, it's kind of hard to keep up with all your subscriptions. So it's kind of like you just have to lean into exploring, hearing new stuff and kind of just going on a journey. What do you think, Kirk? What are some of your favorites?
So I think I had already listened to Snap Judgment, but I think I'd already listened to that one. That would definitely have been one of the ones for sure. But Reply All, I know it's not a little podcast. It's not an indie podcast.
Right.
But that show, I love it so much. And then another one is My Brother and Me, which is absurd, but they are the funniest guys. And we've seen them live twice now. And they're just so funny. Everything they do is hilarious. So I didn't listen to either of those shows until doing our show and discovering them through that. So those would probably be my two main ones. You
know what, though? One of my favorite discoveries recently, and it's a little bit of a spoiler for about 35 minutes from now, is Petri Dish Podcast is hilarious. Like,
It's
I loved
fantastic.
it. Yeah, I really loved it. Both of us kind of looked at each other like, yeah, I kind of want to subscribe to that. Like,
Yeah.
I just want to hear that when it comes out. But we'll talk more about that later. But yeah, no, it really was one of my favorite discoveries we've had recently.
100%.
And I tell you what, and again, no spoil. This is coming out in a couple, in a few weeks for me, but for the people listening, talking about the podcast community, Sean Allen, who's one of the hosts of Petri Dish, and his brother Nathan, and Sean is one of the most supportive guys on like podcast Twitter. Like if you follow their account, the Petri Dish account, he is like constantly tagging people's shows, like, oh, he's got like this big list that he puts out. So when somebody asks for podcasts, he's always like, oh yeah, here's 10 of them that I love that would fit maybe what you like. And so he's always shouting people out. He's a good dude on top of being, a great scientist and a fantastic podcaster.
Yeah.
They're hilarious. Yeah. They're really funny.
Truly hilarious podcast.
Well, that's good to hear that my my recommendation didn't fall flat.
I'm glad definitely not.
Okay, so let's I was going to say, speaking of Petri dishes, that's not an excellent segue, but we're going to go with it. Speaking of Petri dishes, okay, give me a crash course on algae. If I had never heard of algae, what are the most important things I should know about it? Because I think people think they know what algae is and really have absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
Why don't you take this one, Zach?
Oh, okay. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Sure. Yeah, I'll take this one. Okay, so in general, it is a microscopic plant. It is a single cell plant, and they can range from something that just makes the water look green to like the seaweed you see in the ocean is just a different variety. There are so many varieties of algae that literally it makes the entirety of all the other life that we see on this planet look like just a single branch while the rest is a tree. Essentially, and we've learned all this through amazing courses that we took when they first had coronavirus lockdown in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
So we took a course just on algae. So I'm going to try and put my student hat on and really funnel
That's
some of
why
that
I had you
information
do
back
it,
out.
because we both took the class and I forget things immediately, and you at least remember some things.
You didn't know there'd be a follow-up exam on this podcast,
Yeah,
so you're
no.
welcome.
Exactly.
You're
Yeah.
welcome.
But yeah, it's basically, when you look at it, algae and even the earlier stages that turned into what we see now is like kind of more prevalent algae. The first microscopic organisms that could take carbon dioxide and create oxygen are essentially the reason for life on Earth. They have created approximately 50% of the oxygen that's available in our atmosphere. And so literally everything that has happened is due to this little thing that you kind of just ignore in a pond that makes it look green, you know? And so it's kind of wild when you start digging into just how complex they are to see the wide variety and to see the wide variety of applications for them, to see the historical usage for it, and to also see just how important it is to basically life in general.
Algae's pretty amazing. No, it really is. And there's a meme that I don't know if y'all are in this Wild Green Memes Facebook group. If you're not, you should be. You'd love it. So it's pretty much just like ecology memes, which is sounds like you would be like, okay, there's 250,000 members in this group. There's 250,000 members.
Oh,
in this group.
nice.
It's crazy. So there's an algae meme that pops up every now and then, and it's like the first panel is like people talking about, oh, we need to save the trees because they produce all the oxygen, and then the bottom panel is like a pond, a green pond, and it just says sad algae noises.
Yeah.
Because they're so important to our ecosystem.
What's the name of the group again?
Wild Green Memes for Ecological Fiends.
Wow.
It's a mouthful.
It's great.
And I actually, so I interviewed those guys. It was episode 18 or 19. And it was the creator of the group and one of the admins, and they are all about ecology and, you know, taking care of the environment and all that. And they kind of found a way to do, it started out just as a goofy meme group, but has grown into really, they have a nonprofit they've started where they do ecological restoration, all kinds of stuff. It's
Wow,
really
that's
cool.
awesome.
Really cool. So that's another thing I could recommend to you that you check out. But so as far as like what y'all do in like with true algae, so you were taking, as I understand, I was looking on your website earlier and kind of trying to be prepared, and I'm not very good at that. But again, your clopia, did I say that right?
You got it.
Okay. Yeah, great.
Yeah, it's like the first time I've heard it pronounced correctly by somebody who doesn't work for the company.
Well, and earlier when you said it, I was like, okay, I need to make a note to not pronounce it wrong later. So how does this work? And without, you know, giving away any secrets or whatever, what are some of the basics of how your products work?
So, long story short, during the reproduction of this algae, it creates a lot of bioactive metabolites.
Mhm.
And so our product technically doesn't have algae in it. It's the metabolic byproduct of the algae.
Oh, okay.
Because algae itself will want to keep growing, thus it wouldn't be shelf stable. It wouldn't be able to be in a container. The container would want to bust. Just like a lot of biologicals that are out there, you either have to put your biological in a dormant state or you have to pasteurize it. We just remove it because most of the stuff you're trying to get out of it anyway is from the cultured water, which is what we're selling to ag, is the cultured water of the algae.
Okay. And there's a really great picture on the homepage of your website. I guess it's you, Kirk, standing in the middle of these
is.
big, like
I
big
haven't been
green
on the website in a while.
tubes. It's very dramatic. I like it. It's a great picture. But so it looks like you kind of just grow them in these big like biotubes or bio
Yeah.
containers, and uh, it's really. I mean, just the little bit that I've read on it, it's really fascinating. It sounds like y'all have had really good results with the product.
Yeah, so like I said, we used to be able to make 30 gallons a day. And the most amazing thing about this, and it just still blows my mind and it's amazing, is that we bought this algae from a university 3 years ago. And it's the same algae. It's just it's great, 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 great grandchildren
Hmm.
is what it is. Because it just it splits and divides and continues growing. So we just never harvest it completely. We only harvest 50%, and then it just keeps growing and refills overnight. When we're at full production, we can harvest every 24 hours,
Wow.
which is amazing. As long as there's sunlight and there's warm weather and they have NPK, that's all they need, and they'll grow. Um, so yeah, we grow them in those photobioreactors, and now when our current capacity is at full production, we can create a little bit over, what is it, like
Hmm.
2,500 gallons a day?
Yep. About
Wow.
2,000 a day.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, within 24 hours, you're going again. It's a really cool kind of closed loop system that's extremely efficient at this point. The only inputs are, like you said, just some water and very small amounts of NPK, just so the algae can eat it, not so that it exists in the final product.
Sure.
And the only byproduct is literally the biomass. The algae cells themselves is the only runoff from the plant. So it's a pretty cool, efficient system that they've kind of gotten perfected here.
That's awesome, and it sounds like it's probably from a sustainability standpoint really great, right? Because you've
Hmm.
got like a instead of having to synthesize all of these products, which a lot of times is a very petroleum heavy and just
Mhm.
input heavy process. I mean, you're the algae's doing the work. It's the workhorse and the heavy lifter here. That's really cool.
Yeah, no, it's really awesome, and in the long run, we're hoping to be able to as well sell the biomass, either for uh, like chicken feed or something like that, because it's very high protein. I mean, they
Hmm.
sell chlorella. I always get mixed up.
Clopia pills?
Chlorella,
Not
yeah,
yet. Not yet. That's
yeah.
coming soon, though.
They already sell chlorella pills, like on Amazon. Go on Amazon right now, you can buy them, or spirulina or whatever. It's very high in protein, and the amazing thing about chickens is they can digest it without having to it being the cell walls being broken. Whereas,
Sure.
where for humans we would have to process it a bunch to be able to
Yeah,
take
that
that
was
protein.
that was definitely a cool thing that I learned throughout this whole process is like all those omega-3 fatty acids are not readily available to us in algae, which is the original source. That's how we get it
Huh.
from fish, is because fish eat the algae and they can break that down too. But we can't. So when you're doing any kind of supplement, you have to literally break the cell wall for it to be bioavailable if you
Huh.
used just algae itself.
That's fascinating. It makes sense though, because like I guess there's always like some kind of ecological pass through, some kind of biological pass through. That's really pretty interesting. So as far as like and I'm even trying to figure, because I'm just so fascinated by this. I'm trying to figure out the right questions to ask. This is something that we do a lot of greenhouse research in, different kinds of products and different kinds of plant compounds that are intended to improve fertility, improve overall plant growth and plant vigor. And this is something that I think is really interesting. And this may be something you've done, or I'm just throwing stuff in my office making noise, which is great for so this is an aside, but I'm terrible at sitting still. I cannot sit still. And so
Me
for a
neither.
podcast, like there's always like squeaky chairs in the background, and I've just sold out to it.
Yeah,
Like
no, I have to force myself to not move in this chair. You have no idea how noisy it is. Like I have to just be like, don't.
Yeah, and it's a challenge that I have not been able to rise to yet. Has this been tried in like hydroponic systems, or is it mostly field work that you've done so far? You may not be able to answer that.
No, we can't answer it. We have mainly done it in fields. We're actually in discussions right now with both research centers and, you know, small people that have hydroponics themselves, and we're going to do some trials actually starting now. We actually just gave them product the other day for some small hydroponic trials. That will just be anecdotal, but then we're also looking to do some with the research companies like Pacific Ag Research or a university.
Yeah. Well, let's talk off camera about that because I have I have some thoughts. So
Done.
maybe we can chat about that a little bit more. No, that's just so fascinating, and I think that for anyone listening that is like, why are we talking about algae? Because food production is kind of a big deal, and we talk about a lot on the show how people don't think they care about plants and stuff. Like people just don't know. I think that people just don't know yet that they care about plants and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you really start to drill into the science and the necessity of good research and good product in all of these things, like if people like to eat, if people like, our population is not getting smaller. Like we are exploding worldwide as far as population goes.
Mm-hmm.
And so any kind of new technologies and new processes, and this not that algae is a new process, but new applications of things is only going to help us going forward to feed 9-10 billion hungry people.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also is, it's something that we're trying to test a lot of different angles here, because if you start looking into the research available on algae, it almost all is centered around biofuel, which it makes sense because the money being put into the research is from the oil companies and people looking to diversify there. But when you start looking at other applications for algae, which, like you said, have existed for a long time, and we're always finding new applications, there is a pretty surprising lack of research on a lot of the different angles here. And so it's a cool opportunity for us to kind of dig in and try to understand these things better, and also put third-party research in play so that it's not just anecdotal. So like one of the things that we're trying to test, and we're trying to see if this is something that we can work with, is a literal decrease in the amount of fertilizer that people have to use. So if we've seen the problems in Florida, we had crazy red tide, which is just an algal bloom, and literally sometimes not even. That's where you start getting real weird on algae, because they call cyanobacteria an algae, and like it's kind of like an algae, but it's not.
Algae as well.
Yeah. But you have toxic algae blooms, and then you look at why is this happening. And for the most part, it's happening because of warm water, and it's happening because of runoff of excess chemicals used for either traditional farming or even for lawn care and things like that. So if we could find a way to reduce the inputs, reduce the amount of nitrogen that needs to be put out, could we help reduce the amount of red tide occurrences we're seeing, or things like that? So it's a fun thing to try to explore what all this can be, and to try and put that research in so that we can better understand what we're working with.
That's pretty amazing.
And the main mode of action for our product is it really just explodes your biome around your root system. It just, mycorrhiza goes crazy, bacillus goes crazy, and all of these microorganisms help the plant be able, I mean, you understand this probably better than we'll ever understand it. It helps the plant to be able to make those fertilizers, natural or synthetic, more bioavailable to the plant. And so that's where we shine. In fact, we did some trials on 2 different nurseries, and me and Zach were the ones that figured out why one of them worked and one of them didn't, because it was a nursery, so they're using sterile soil.
Right.
Them was using a biological product as well as our product. One of them was not. The one that was using the biological product, we had great results. The rooting was so much quicker, such better results. They had much quicker pinning plants, and they were able to step them up quicker. The other nursery, no results at all. And I'm like, what's going on? Why? And it's because the other nursery was putting no biologicals. So it's like, the way I equate it was just like we were trying to start a fire, but we had nothing. It was just wet, grass. It's not even wood.
Yeah.
There was nothing there to kickstart. And so that's what our main mode of action is to really kick off your biodiversity in the root system. And we did some third-party trials this year on strawberries for fertilizer, and I'm not gonna lie. I would not have believed it if I didn't see it with my own eyes. I went out there, and granted, this is at a research center, so these are small plots. You know, they're
Yeah.
100 feet long or something like that. They're pretty small. But there was 4 different treatments. One with full dose of fertilizer, one with a quarter with our product. Basically, all the way down to 1/4 of the recommended fertilizer dose, and you could not tell the difference at all.
Wow.
At all. And in fact, the ones that even the one that had 25% of the fertilizer that's recommended but had our product with it picked more than the conventional without our product, which blew my mind.
That's amazing. And I've done some strawberry work in my past career with the extension service. And like I can definitely tell people out there listening how much they respond to fertility, right? Like if you don't fertilize your strawberries correctly, you're shooting yourself in the foot to begin with, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're heavy feeders, and so you need that fertility. And yeah, well, and I'm trying to pin down the right guest for it, but at some point we are going to do like a full episode on mycorrhizae and some of those soil associations, because that is the basis for everything we do.
Yeah, it really is mind blowing, and it's something that I had never, at least because everybody I feel like has a general sense that soil is important. Nobody has a sense of how important it is, like just
and
how
what
important
all's
it
going
is.
on in there. Like there's a lot going on in soil. It ain't just dirt. Well,
Yeah.
most of the time.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely, man. That's so fascinating. I think I could talk about algae for a lot longer than we probably have to keep talking. I'm looking at the time, and I can hear Paul Choma already saying, "All right, you're coming up on an hour, man." um, but so no, y'all are saving the world one alga at a time. So if one of the things I do on the show at the end is I ask for like a piece of advice, and it can be about like careers, it can be about plants, it can just be about life in general, whatever y'all think is important. But from each of you, if there was one thing that you would like to send the listeners of this episode home with, or out the door of their car with, or whatever, what would that be? I didn't prep you for this. I'm sorry.
No, you did not.
No, this is okay. First of all, I do this on my show, and I get why you do it, because you get much more true answers. Okay. First of all, go grow something yourself. Go grow something outside. It really is a rewarding feeling. It's been pretty crazy going through 2020. It gives you a lot of, I don't know. There's been a lot to think about constantly, a constant bombardment of things to think about. And we've seen, I think more people are planting gardens right now than they have since World War II victory gardens. Like we're seeing these things happen, and I think there's real value in that. I think there's real value in putting in the work and nurturing something and growing something. So that's a great thing. And maybe an aside from like anything that we have going on, but just something that through all of the chaos that is 2020, I'd say just be good to each other. Treat everyone like a human being, and be kind to each other. Everyone needs it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's almost exactly that last.
Did he take yours? Yeah,
exactly what I was gonna say.
I saw your face when he said that. It's like, ooh, he took yours.
We've been going through so much as a people, and we're about to go through an election cycle, and there's so many things that are currently dividing us. But we're all human beings, and we all need love, and we all just need to respect each other, and we don't have to agree. That's something that me, Zach, and Josh, we used to have 2 hours of recording, maybe just an hour, but we would spend 7 hours together, and most of it was debating. But we respectfully disagreed about things all the time.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's lost. People can't respectfully disagree about things anymore. And so I think that it's fundamentally important that we get back to being able to respect each other's opinions, whether we think they're right or not, but just respect the person as a person and to value each other. It's just, I don't know. I think that that's very important, especially right now.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the only way we ever learn anything. And that's the only way that we'll ever, I think, continue to progress as a society, is if we, what has made us great in the past is that we were able to work through these issues, right? And rely on each other's viewpoints sometimes, and come up with creative solutions to things. And I think that's where we need to get again, for sure.
Definitely.
So guys, this has been really excellent. Like, I really have enjoyed this conversation. And again, I could talk about algae apparently for a very long time. But we'll kind of wrap up, and we may have to do this again at some point.
Yeah.
But because I really did enjoy talking to y'all
We're
a lot.
definitely game.
Oh no, we're definitely
and we're
calling you about our show. So
Yeah.
we're gonna have one on the other side. I have to think of a deep, thoughtful question to drop on you right at the end.
Just hit me with it. I feel bad sometimes doing that, but it gets like, I feel like it gets, like you said, just really true answers, right? If it's like, I don't know, and then you just say the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, I do the same thing, and I feel bad too. I know exactly where you're at. I literally ask musicians, "What does music mean to you?" And it's so general that, like, literally, but you get really heartfelt answers from it. You get them to really think about it and be on the spot, and no canned answer.
For sure. So just to wrap up, why don't y'all tell us where can we find you? Plug whatever you want to. Plug your stuff.
Okay, we are at the PDS Official on Twitter. If you search the Podcast Discovery Show at this point, you can pretty much find it. I think that you can find most of our platforms. We have one on Twitch, one on YouTube. We have a club that even Vikram's in called the Podcast Discovery Club, where we just share random discoveries throughout the week, and people can talk about it. It's really fun in there. Anything I'm missing, Kirk?
No, that's it. I mean, we're everywhere. Everywhere you can find things, we're there. We have a thing there.
Yeah. And
if you like podcasts, definitely follow us on the journey of finding new podcasts and then discussing them with us. And we would love to hear your discussions or your discoveries, and to discuss them and hear what you like about the shows that you listen to.
Yeah, man. I mean, if you're interested in finding out more about the True Algae stuff we talked about, it's just truealgae.com. We're working on a new website. We're going to be publishing a lot of new research, a lot of new data as we get it in. And so, and also me and Kirk will have another show that is an ag tech show that we're hopefully going to have Vikram on very soon. And so there'll be a lot of crossover stuff happening at the end of this episode.
Yeah, Well, as soon as we quit recording, we'll talk. Well, it's almost like, you send the kids to bed and then you talk about them behind their back. Yeah, that's.
Are you calling all the listeners the kids? All right, kids.
I'm gonna plead the fifth on that one.
It's time to go to sleep.
Yeah, y'all go to sleep. Go listen to something else. Go listen to the Podcast Discovery Show, and we're gonna talk about you behind your backs.
Yeah, no, but thank you so much, Vikram.
We really appreciate it. It was a blast. And next time, if you want to interview us again, we'll probably know even more about algae than we do now.
Always learning, right?
Every single day.
Well, so something, and this is again, I'm really bad at ending the show too. Sometimes I just keep talking, but something we've started doing. We just had our first one recently. Is deep dives, and so like I'm bringing guests back to really like drill into the science part of like what they do. So we may talk algae again sometime before too long.
All right, we're gonna study then. We have homework.
Yeah, there will be another exam. I know. So everyone, thanks so much for listening. Y'all are super cool. Thanks for hanging in there and learning about algae, and another really great podcast you should listen to. So I will talk to y'all very soon, and y'all keep being safe and hanging in there.
You too. Thanks, Vikram. All right. Everybody on the live stream world, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to get everything set up, but we will be back shortly for the Podcast Discovery Show. Thanks for checking out. We hope you stick around.
All right. Don't close Zencaster, even though I think our
welcome back to us, I guess, because you were already here. But thanks for sticking around. And we actually have a special guest. The person who recommended us last week's episode is going to be able to join the conversation with us.
Yep, Vikram from the Planthropology podcast is going to be. Do you have another podcast too, or are you just like a?
So I end up being a guest for whatever reason. People ask me to come talk nerdy stuff, but no, I actually did start a second podcast. I've had a couple. I was doing one with a couple of friends called the Dapper Hour, which was not my idea of the name, but we just talked about guy stuff, what it looks like to be a gentleman in 2020 or 2019. Nobody knows anything about how to be in 2020. I also do one called Jolly Green Scientists with a buddy of mine who's an entomologist.
That's the one that I'm like, I know he's got another thing. I haven't listened to it yet, but I've seen it.
We're just a few episodes.
Around.
Yeah, we're just a few episodes in, but we like alternate and take like a paper in entomology one episode and then a paper in horticulture and discuss them and kind of try to cut through some of the jargon.
That's awesome. 1 6. Dang it! I meant 1 second, not.
That's a
Wait, what did you ask me to be on this for? I think I'm confused.
no. Yeah, I mean, this is part of the process. You have to just deal with whatever happens. You can't leave now.
Dang it. Words are hard.
It's been a long week too.
Yeah, it's been okay. I can't believe it's August, right? Is it September?
It feels like I don't even know.
It's almost September.
Yeah.
This has felt like one giant run-on week since January. Actually, since March. Since March till now has been just one big blur of a hellscape.
That is accurate. Yep.
That's bleak.
We'll get through it probably.
Yeah, maybe.
Probably.
Hopefully. Fingers crossed, everybody.
So
We'll see. I can't promise. All right, let me pull up the little notes that we have from our listening today. Zach, do you have them up as well?
I'm getting that right now. And then also,
you had like a bio or something, didn't you?
oh, wait. No, we should definitely use Glenn Washington's discovery, right?
He gave us one?
Yeah, he totally gave us one.
Dude, I'm excited. I didn't know if any of those people responded other than our buddies.
Oh, he's talking about his episodes, but still, if Glenn Washington gives us a custom episode, I think we have to do it.
Yeah. Glenn Washington's such a cool guy.
Yeah, so that's what I was looking. I was like, well, we need to have a recommendation for the end.
Vlado sent us one.
Oh, Vlado did send us one?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's in the Facebook Messenger. I don't know how we would play that.
He sent let me look. Okay, so maybe we came back too early, but hi everybody. Thanks for joining us.
This is part of the podcast. You're seeing behind the scenes.
We can't be on the be right back for too long because then it's just boring. Yeah, this is the behind the scenes stuff.
All right, where did he send this?
I may have only gotten it, not you as well.
Okay.
So
see if you can download the file.
Yeah, how do you do this? This is freaking Facebook. Nope, not remove friend. That's not looking.
That would complicate things. But yeah, no, maybe then next week maybe we'll
Let's do Glenn Washington's and then we'll do Vlado's next week because I don't know how to do that and we'll figure it out off of live stream.
Okay. Yeah, okay. That's fair. Because
so I'll let you announce it because you can see the Twitter thing.
Sure. Okay, so it looks like we have he recommended either Gambit, a man inspired by joy writes a song, then he discovers it's become a weapon, and a boy beat down by life learns to fight back. Have you listened to that one?
I think that's the one with Shannon Kaysen. I'm not positive.
There's one called Outbreak in San Quentin. And there's one he says, I love this story. The country doctor, a Muslim doctor, moves his family to a small rural Midwestern town. To his surprise, they fit right in. and then came
That
the
one's
2016
amazing.
election.
That one's amazing, but it gets very political.
It's always a tough.
It's a really good one.
See, this is they really are getting to see the behind the scenes here, because normally we try to not get very political on the show, because it's like that's everywhere. If you want to find a political discussion, you can find people yelling at each other on the street corner right now,
Pretty
honestly.
easy.
So it's not something that we always felt like we're like, should we be the escape from that? I don't know. What do you think, Kirk? Do any of those three sound good to you?
What was the first one you said?
The first one was called Gambit. Let me see. I'm going to look at his website.
Pick two of them. Just pick two of them, and let's do it. Because
I mean, Gambit is 50 minutes long. Do you want to do another?
That's just one then. If it's 50 minutes, let's just do that one.
I mean, yeah, Snap Judgment's good. It's fine. We're going to wing it.
Yeah.
And Glenn Washington recommended it. We're going to talk about it.
You ever listen to Snap Judgment, Vikram?
I have not, but I'll have
It's
to give it a
good.
try.
It's really good.
I'll add it to my 1,000 podcasts I'm subscribed to.
Yeah, it's worth. It's one of the only ones that I've listened to every single episode of.
For now. Give
I
it
feel
another
guilty.
week.
I feel guilty sometimes because I'll hold up my phone. I scroll back through all of my podcasts and see all the numbers of you haven't listened to this, and I'm like, oh, but these people are my friends now, and I'm like,
no, it's still worth doing. It's definitely worth doing. Just subscribe to everybody that you like, and then listen when you can.
Yeah,
still helps them out with visibility.
I've really gotten into audio dramas lately. If you haven't heard, so Oz 9's really funny. And then there's one called Relativity that is killer. It's so good. There's 50 something episodes, and I think I binged it. I mean, they're not very long. They're 10, 12 minutes. But I binged it in 2 days, and it's really good.
I do love audio dramas, but like Zach said, it's very difficult to have a discussion about an audio drama.
Yeah.
Because first of all, you're trying not to spoil it. And then second of all, usually we're talking about one episode, and it's serialized, so it's
it doesn't work out right.
Yeah, it's very difficult to have a discussion. All right. So you
right.
ready?
Give me 1 second because oh wait, Vikram, what did you say the two brothers' names were?
Sean and Nathan.
Nathan?
Sean
Okay.
and...
All right. Yeah, I wanted to make sure. I thought it was David, so I wanted to double check on that and not say the wrong thing.
Sean, Nathan, and David. There's
and David's
talk.
David's us. We're all David. Okay.
If you think about it, we're really all David.
I'm gonna hit the record button.
Yeah, you're good.
Welcome to the Podcast Discovery Show, the podcast that's about other podcasts, where every single week we do a deep dive discussion about a podcast we recommended the week before. At the end of this episode, we're going to recommend another episode, and that's what we're going to talk about next week. I'm Kirk.
I'm Zach. And
we
this
have a
week,
special guest.
We double did. Go ahead.
We have a special guest because we had the pleasure and the honor to just be interviewed to be on his show, and we've talked about his show before, Planthropology. We have the host and also the one that recommended the show this week, Vikram.
How's it going? I mean, like we haven't been talking for the past 2 hours.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, no, we're doing good.
It's funny. Yeah, gosh. It's funny how that worked out, though, because it was Kirk was just like, hey, do you have a minute? Let's just talk about it. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, and I don't really know of a time we've done this type of situation. So it was a great idea, and we're pumped about it.
It's very specific. It's a very specific situation.
Yeah, it really is. Sometimes you gotta just go with the experience.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked. Because you had this tell us about your recommendation. How long have you listened to this show, and where did you find it?
So I have been listening to Petri Dish for several months now, and I feel like most podcasts I discover these days, I was on Twitter, and there's this interesting podcast community, and there's a group of science podcasts that kind of all chat and recommend each other and hang out a little bit, and so I saw a Petri dish pop up one day, and I was like, oh, that's cool. And so I don't remember exactly where I jumped into the show. They've got 50 something episodes, I think. I think they just passed their 1 year anniversary, actually. But like, I was hooked right away because it's hilarious. These dudes are so funny. And so when y'all reached out a couple weeks ago asking for a recommendation, I was like, oh no, I know right away I had to scroll through and make sure you hadn't talked about it before. But I was like, yeah, Petri dish is, I think, because I just from listening to y'all's show, I kind of knew you would like their sense of humor and that you would kind of dig what they do.
And you were absolutely right. We both had a great time listening to the show, and it does hit on multiple things for us. We love that kind of the fun and educational at the same time. We've done a lot of shows like that, and this is a great example of that.
Yeah, no, and you were not kidding. They have that irreverent humor, which we very much enjoy. We are still 12-year-old boys in our hearts.
Yeah, everyone is.
Yeah,
at all the really silly and juvenile things, and I love that they have this. They're brothers, right?
Yeah,
and so the thing with brothers is they've lived with each other their whole life. Did you know that most brothers
typically yes,
they've known each other for a long time. What I'm saying is what I'm trying to say is no, they have this great chemistry, man. They know how to play off of each other, and they know how to it's so funny. They have specific roles. You know, Sean is he's the doctor, right? He's the one that is the scientist. He's the one that plays the smart one role. And Nathan is the one that plays the everyman. That I was asking Zach, I'm like, he's got to be playing this up, right? Because I can tell he's a smart guy, but he asks some questions. You're like, really, man?
No, honestly,
like
he's hilarious though.
That brothers have known each other their whole lives.
Yeah, his timing is hilarious though. Some of those questions, we were just losing it because it essentially kind of plays out like that where Sean starts to explain a topic and he starts to explain all these little intricacies and interesting things about because we did 2 episodes for this one. So Extremophiles is just things that live in extreme environments. So Sean is bringing all of these cool little facts, and Nathan is just trying to absorb them, as are we all. And so I do feel like that was a role that we could fit into.
Yeah, and I love their intro music for one. Their intro music was great, and well, half of it was music, half of it was a bunch of quotes and stuff like that. But they talked about a bunch of different extreme environments that we have life here on this planet that can survive or even thrive. They start with the ocean, like deep down in the ocean. And they talk about, there's so many different things that make it a crazy environment to live in. Pressure, light. The one that blew my mind though is they talked about the pH that deep in the ocean, and how like it literally it'll like eat a crab's bones or something, like disintegrate because of the pH in that deep in the ocean. I thought that was crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and then there's still somehow these little, different organisms that literally eat sulfur. Like, I mean, that doesn't seem like it should be a thing, right? Like,
yeah. And then we talked about like, what was it? Marine snow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just things dying and feeding the lowest levels of the ocean. And it's crazy because you assume that everything in the ocean needs some form of light, and in some cases they do, but then you get to the depths of the ocean and you see what essentially looks like alien life. Like they had those, we've started to see a lot of crazy stuff because just technology keeps getting better. So I hope we continue to see crazy stuff out of the deepest parts of the ocean, because it literally looks like an alien planet. These things do not look like anything else I've ever seen. And you get like those documentaries like Blue Planet and stuff like that. And sometimes they'll just go down there and you'll just see this whole world that's so close to us, but so far away.
It's so wild. And sometimes they show some of these animals and I'm like, what? I'm glad that thing's at the bottom of the ocean.
Yeah.
Like, it's scary.
It is scary.
I do feel like those animals have a much scarier presence. Just their general demeanor looks much scarier. And I don't know if I don't know. It's just the harsh environment. I think they're just rugged creatures.
Yeah.
They feel so alien because, I don't know. There's just something about these new, just, they look scary and they're so far away. It feels like on those documentaries that they're like in space, but they're literally in the ocean. And it's crazy.
It's like you see some of these fish and you're like, that fish has extra parts. Like, you pull a bass out of a lake and you're like, okay, I can recognize everything I'm looking at on this fish. I'm like, no, that one's got a headlight. What's going on?
I can see all the way through this one and see all of its insides. I don't
something's
like
not
it.
right. Yeah.
I also love that it's kind of always been that mysterious thing, because literally if you look at like mythology, it just in a lot of cases points to a real animal. Like you look at like a kraken, and then they talked about like colossal squids. Is there no chance that there was a pirate ship that saw one of these squids and then like they all came back and like, oh, these idiots saw some giant sea octopus? Like it's crazy that it's always been and still is this kind of mysterious place that almost is so mysterious that it goes into mythology. And so I think it's always going to be fascinating.
Yeah, it's like one of the only frontiers in the world that still has not been very explored, because some of those places we still can't get to, at least at a large scale. I mean, we can send one thing really far down, but it's so vast and so huge, we can't explore all of it. There's so many creatures that we have not found when it comes to the ocean, especially deep ocean.
And again, like I've watched enough sci-fi and like horror movies that I'm like, maybe we should just leave some of those things alone. They can just hang out down there. It's like, you stay down there and we'll have our we'll have our space and it's okay.
Yeah. It definitely is I think that kind of plays in the mythology a little bit. There's a lot of fear about just kind of the infinite like blackness. It's not actually infinite, but like just the unknowable under the surface. Because I mean, you look at even as far back as like Jaws and things like that. There's something to it. There's something to like exploring the oceans. But then they also talk about like the lava crickets, and it's
I got one more thing before we get out of the ocean. I want to talk for a second about Nathan's theory about whales.
Okay, first of all, are you questioning this theory? Is this not like scientifically backed?
Vikram, you're our resident scientist on this episode. Do you think that whales were a civilization that already went through global warming and are just...
I feel like they've got to be, right? And like the longer they stay down there, like the slower they talk, and like I don't know.
It's like the Ents in Lord of the Rings. They're an ancient society, and they're just kind of done with us at this point.
Take their time.
Yeah.
That was great. That was an amazing theory about.
I mean, it's really it's the only thing that makes any sense.
Yeah,
I mean, you're not wrong.
I haven't heard a better theory about whether or not whales were an ancient civilization. So until I do, this is the one.
It's canon. It's like head canon now. Whale canon.
Whale canon.
Yeah.
I wish that we still named our episodes weird things, because whale canon would definitely be the one, because it definitely points to a different thing than what you're talking about, but out of context. I mean, how big does that cannon have to be?
Be a big cannon.
Whale cannon is Josh's middle name, he says.
But yeah, then they talked a lot about kind of the harshness of the depth of the ocean, but then they also talk about there's lava crickets that can survive where it seems completely impossible to survive. They also go into space, and we've talked about tardigrades before on the show. Water bears and their crazy ability to survive no matter what. And so they essentially just kind of take you through all this. But when they were talking about space, one of the things that definitely like struck me is Sean talked about how there was a group that literally, and he called it a manifesto, which freaked me out a little bit, because I feel like I've never heard a beneficial version of manifesto. You know what I mean? There's never been like, oh, I read this manifesto and it changed my life for the better. And it's like, I don't know how to feel about it, but their entire premise was, we want to focus on mining asteroids because that's where the money is. So then my thought is, so then you force the people who have money to try harder to get to space so that they can mine asteroids. And it's like, I kind of get that logic. If you can convince the richest that they can get richer by doing it, then they might just do it to get richer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they talked about how much money worth of resources there are in these asteroids that are going by, and it's astronomical. It's like trillions of dollars or something ridiculous.
Yeah, just flying right by us.
Yep.
We go out and try to take pictures of them, and that's, you know.
You got to tell us about that story. I saw that picture today. How many pictures did you get that came out pretty good?
Oh, yeah. So I went out. I'm going to start off and say that I'm way too old to be up past midnight. Like, so I'm a amateur photographer. So I go out and do like, I like to do Milky Way photography. So a friend and I just kind of drove out into the middle of nowhere. And like, it's always a little like sketchy because we'll like pull over on the side of the highway, or I found this like oil well, this pump jack on Google Maps. Like, I was just scrolling around on Google Maps. I was like, oh, this will be a good spot. So we're like out in the middle of this like field with a pump jack, and everything's creaking, and we're out there taking pictures. So that's just I like to take pictures of space from safely here on the planet. That's about my speed.
Yeah, you took some really cool ones that I saw that you posted on your
Oh,
Facebook.
thanks.
So I'm excited about that because I want to see some of the other ones. But yeah, they talked about. So we already talked about the extremophiles.
Yeah, and this is like the transition, because it did go from them talking about the extremes of space and the things that can survive there and what it takes to survive there, to the next episode that he recommended was a space episode. But before we get there, I do have to say this show also has fictional ads that will blow your mind. Like,
hilarious.
The first like 5 seconds, you're like, this ad sounds weird, and then you realize, oh yeah, it is weird, and it's amazing.
And they have like recurring characters that pop up on the show, and you're just like, did they just say Jimmy Coconuts? What's going on? Like,
yeah, I've already picked up they really love coconuts.
They do, yeah.
Coconuts are very important to the show, so join in the coconut love.
Yeah, the ads were ridiculous. They were they were so funny, and they were a little bit political too, which was in a good way and fun way, I guess. Yeah. If politics can be fun, they made them fun at least. They're fun to make fun of.
I'm glad somebody can, honestly.
Someone has to do it, right?
Yeah.
Like, it has to be done.
I miss Jon Stewart.
Seriously.
But back to space, they did talk a lot about the challenges with humans being in space, and Nathan was hilarious with talking about, just space kind of sucks, and of course he says it in a lot of different ways, but
yeah, so if we haven't said it, this show's not safe for work.
It is not,
for sure.
Yeah, it's not, but it is hilarious, and you learn a ton. But yeah, they aren't trying to be scholarly in this show. It's really, really funny. It's a really enjoyable show.
It's one of our favorite things, though, because we learned stuff, but at the same time, you're having a good time and laughing, and you don't know you're learning stuff. So that's the
secret.
That's our favorite kind of learning.
It's like hiding the medicine in your dog's like food. You have to hide it in something so that you take your medicine.
It's science wrapped in cheese.
That's exactly right. Petri dish is a heartworm pill wrapped in cheese.
There you go. See, and I mean, that's the best review I'm sure they could ever have hoped for.
I think it's absolutely.
But so they talked about like bone loss and muscle atrophy. Did you know, Zach, that the Bowflex was made from NASA? I didn't know.
I did not. I assumed that was made by some kind of a con artist who wanted to go on to daytime TV and try and sell workout machines.
I know. I thought it was Mr. Flex or something like
Mr.
that.
Flex made. It's like, I need to name this after myself. This is the Bowflex.
Yeah, Twigs thought it was made by Chuck Norris. But it was
Chuck
made
Norris
by
did
Chuck
do those,
Norris.
didn't he?
It was made by Chuck Norris when he worked for NASA. This is what happened.
Oh, okay. So now it makes sense. Now I understand.
But it is crazy the human body's reaction to being in low gravity or zero gravity. It's actually kind of terrifying. And one of the things that I never
Oh,
really
yeah.
thought about, they talked about, from what we know from the space station and stuff like that, with, you know, bone degradation and muscle atrophy and stuff like that. If we were to go to Mars, there's there's a chance that by the time humans got there, they'd be too weak to push any of the buttons. And
I'm
I
hoping
never
they would
really thought
address
about that.
that. They would know that was. Well, my favorite thing was this was maybe my favorite Nathan question was like, so after 10 months, you'd be 100% bone loss. You'd have no bones anymore. It's like, yep, you would just be like a jellyfish, I guess. You just fall over. No, but it is crazy to think that literally everything about space travel is hostile, like actively hostile towards humanity being there. Like we live in our very special place that has protected us from everything that will murder us outside of our atmosphere.
Yeah, as much as the deep ocean doesn't want us there, space really doesn't want us
Yeah.
out there.
Oh no, space does not want us at all. And I get it because we're doing a really bad job here. It doesn't want
They're
us
like,
there.
you stay.
We've
You
already
stay.
left bags of crap on the moon. I mean, literal crap. So we're already doing the things that we know we shouldn't be doing here, and we're taking it everywhere. They they kind of talked about all the different planets that we maybe could go visit, and then why maybe we shouldn't, or what could make it difficult. I love how they talked about Venus and, Cloud City, basically from Star
Yeah.
Wars. It kind of brought out my inner nerd. I got a little excited. I'm like, ooh, that'd be so cool. I want to go to Venus and visit Cloud City. That would be amazing.
All right,
That would be
what's your
pretty
favorite
cool.
space movie?
Oh man. This should be easy, right? Like, but there's a
problem
lot
is
of them.
I really like them. I really like them, so it's going to be hard to pick like one.
You know, one I really liked was Firefly.
Oh, yep, that's a great
Serenity,
one.
I guess, was the movie.
Yeah, the movie and the TV show. Honestly, it's all good.
Dude, 13 episodes was not enough.
It was not.
I was sad when that. I really like. That's maybe a different pick because it's almost like a space western or whatever.
It really is.
But I've always loved that movie. Serenity was such a good movie.
Yeah, I think they could reboot that thing because essentially,
Oh,
don't
I
try
would-
and like get new actors. Bring back the same actors and have it be all of them but old and grumpier. And I would watch that
It'd
show.
be fantastic. I'd watch the heck out of that.
Kirk, what do you think?
I mean, I'm a Star Wars guy. We know this. We've me and Josh have repeatedly argued about it on the show and off the show about he loves Star Trek and thinks it's smart and amazing, and he doesn't think Star Wars has anything worth watching. No, he actually likes Star Wars, but I love Star Wars.
Oh, and that's the
think
thing.
Star
I
Trek is
love
boring.
all of this stuff. I don't think Star Trek is boring. I think Star Trek is awesome, like short story format. Not
Oh,
the
yeah.
movies, not so much. The TV shows, yes. Next Generation, like amazing.
What's the best?
I like the idea of Star Trek, and then I watch it, and then I'm like,
Yeah, sure. I'm trying to think. Okay, I really liked Interstellar. I really liked that,
that was
because it mainly came down to like it kind of blowing my mind a little bit. Like when they went to that planet that had like 20 times Earth's gravity, so that each minute there was like a year on Earth. And then you start thinking about like relativity, and your brain explodes a little bit.
yeah. I mean,
Oh, it's really confusing.
even like the space station, it goes around so many times in a day, and when you're on the space station, you're multiple years older by the time you come back from a few months. Or a month or so. It's crazy. It kind of blows my mind.
Yeah. Oh, another one. This is not a movie. But The Expanse. If you haven't watched The Expanse,
Oh, yes.
it is so good.
It's so good.
And I read the novels too, and I really enjoyed those. And I think that like it's one TV show that I think lives up pretty well to the novels.
Yeah, no, I haven't read the books, but the show is really good. I definitely enjoyed
Vikram,
it.
I have a question for you from the live stream.
Okay.
Vlado had a question. He said, "What was the science Twitter community where you found this podcast?"
So if you just like look up hashtag science Twitter, you'll find a whole lot of it, or podcast Twitter. It's real active, but like there's several like podcasters, like Petri Dish, uh, Varmints, who Paul Chomo is as the host of Varmints, Ellen Weatherford from Just the Zoo of Us, and a few others. That kind of just like share each other's stuff, and we joke a lot and talk a lot. And so I think someone, I can't remember exactly, but someone had tagged Petri Dish in something. That's kind of how I found him.
I
And I'm
mean,
just
that's how I found you, because
yeah.
Paul tagged you in something. I'm like, that sounds fun. I like plants. And then I listened to it. I'm like, I like this show. We're going to talk about it. And here we are. See,
all things come back to Paul Chomo.
Yep. That's the real secret.
Yeah, but no. So I mean, if you just kind of look up, science Twitter, podcast Twitter, and even if you just look up some of the like shows we've talked about, you can find like a whole bunch of other shows that way, just because we tag each other so much and stuff.
Awesome.
Sorry,
I just went like quiet for a second. I think I got distracted.
No, you're all good. I heard him taking an edit, so I was giving it a second.
No, I was actually just responding to Lotto. Have you ever listened to It's Not Rocket Surgery? That's a fun show as well.
I think I have. I think I listened to a couple, because I know I'm subscribed to it, so I think I've listened to a couple episodes of that.
They're fun, guys. It's another one of those shows where it's fun, but you're going to learn something, but you don't feel like you're learning something. But then at the end, you're like, I learned a bunch of stuff.
They trick you into it. Yeah, it's great. It's the best way to learn.
I love being tricked into learning.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
So we kind of hit on all of our notes. Is there anything else you want to hit real quick, since we're at an edit point, so we can...
I'm trying to think if there's anything else that was like kind of, because I mean, it's, I definitely want to like, we'll circle back to like talking about, we'll recap and talk about how good the show is, but I'm trying to think if there's any other kind of moments that would be fun to goof off about.
I think that was, at least on our notes, that's all we have. And the bone, Twigs had asked why there's bone loss in space. That was because we're constantly, like, gravity is constantly pushing down on us, and we are strengthening them constantly, right? Is that what it was?
I think so, because that's also the joint and the muscle degradation. I think it's the same thing.
To the muscle atrophy, correct?
Yes.
I think so. That's my understanding, too.
It's the premise of John Carter of Mars. You know what I mean? It's like once you change gravities, you can, like, do different things.
I never watched that movie, but I heard it was bad. But the concept
I didn't see the
of that
movie.
is awesome.
It was not very good.
Yeah,
the concept is good, like that he has superpowers basically because he was from a different planet.
Yeah,
and things were different. I think that's awesome. That's
a
really smart thing.
I'm trying to think.
So then, let's go ahead and circle around. We'll talk about the show real quick, and then you do the recommendation.
Okay.
From
Mr. Glenn Washington himself.
I can't believe we got a response from him.
We not only got one, we got 4.
Mention all of them and then pick, and we'll say which one we want to pick.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead and bring us back in.
So overall, Vikram, we can't thank you enough for introducing this show, because we both just sat there and giggled while we learned about extremophiles and space. It
was amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I had a pretty short list of things I wanted to recommend, and that was at the top of it. So I'm glad y'all enjoyed it as much as I do.
Yeah, so if you're looking for a show that is hilarious and you will learn a lot, definitely check out Petri Dish. It's a fantastic show.
It really is.
And for next week's recommendation, we have a very special one, because Kirk has been literally just tagging any podcast that he likes on Twitter and saying, hey, you want to give us a podcast recommendation? And he hit one. Glenn Washington, the host of Snap Judgment, was sent one of these, saying literally, hey, we like Snap Judgment. We talk about it every Halloween, and Josh hates it. No, he didn't say that part. But we talk about, we basically said, we really like your show. We're celebrating, and would you like to recommend an episode? And so he not only sent one, but he sent 3. And first of all, he said, oh man, thanks a bunch, but picking my favorite Snap is like picking my favorite kid. And then he sent 3. So he can do it, apparently. Watch out, kids. So first one is called Gambit, and I think that's the one that we're going to be discussing. The little tag on it is: a man inspired by joy writes a song, then he discovers it's become a weapon, and a boy beat down by life learns to fight back with the help of an uppercut and milkshakes. So next week we're going to talk about Snap Judgment Gambit, and all of this will be in the show notes so you can find it easily. But also bonus discoveries, because these are apparently ones that Glenn Washington thinks you should check out. He thinks are interesting. There's one called Outbreak at San Quentin, and then another one that he just literally says, I love this story, and it's called The Country Doctor. And the synopsis on this one is essentially a Muslim doctor moves out to Dawson, Minnesota. He didn't know what to expect. He was a brown Muslim man walking into a predominantly white rural town, but much to his surprise, him and his family fit right in, and he quickly became home, and his neighbors became like his extended family. And then came a divisive election in 2016, and some things changed.
It's an amazing episode. It's very political, and we're going to a election cycle, and it's just I don't want this place to be the place where people come to listen to politics. This is supposed to be an entertainment escape from politics. So this is a safe space, but it is a great episode. So if you do want to listen to something like that, I would highly recommend it. It was a great episode.
And they were all mentioned by Glenn Washington himself. So
blows my mind. I mean, I just reached out to everybody. I'm like, hey, Joe Rogan, what podcast would you recommend? Hey, Aaron Mankey, what podcast did you recommend? And I just went down the line like, hey, I like this podcast.
You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Exactly. Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott, Zach Howe.
Well, Vikram, thank you so much for your recommendation. Thank you so much for spur of the moment being on the show.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.
And again, thank you for having us on your show. And if you're listening to this right now and you have not listened to Planthropology,
do it.
You need to. It is amazing.
Well, thanks.
And it will, if you're not already, it will make you a plant person.
Mm-hmm. Everyone is on the inside. You just don't know it yet.
Deep down. Yeah.
All right. So till next week. And remember,
there's more. I messed it up this time.
Shoot,
you messed with me.
You did it.
I know. I messed it up this time.
You messed up.
I know.
You forgot.
I did. I slipped. All right, go again.
And remember,
there's always more to discover.
Oh man, I love how you messed up that time.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
It brings me joy.
No, I'm not. All I have is water twigs. You don't say that. All right, everybody. Another quick break, and then the other Discovery show. We will be right back. Thanks so much to Vikram for joining us.
Vikram, I have been being asked multiple times in the live chat because I have a few people that we are going to play video games with afterward, and they're like, he's really fun. We should invite him to play video games. So when you do get home, we're going to record again after this. When you do get home, if you are available, we would love for you to play video games with us. You are invited. Feel free to hit us up. We're going to play some Overwatch and some other stuff.
All right. Well, I appreciate it. I'll have to go. We'll see if the 4-year-old goes to bed. It's a toss-up.
Yeah. But I did want to throw that out there because people are like, he sounds awesome and fun. Let's have him play with us.
Well, I appreciate that. But guys, thanks for having me. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is great. Fun. And we'll talk to you soon.
All right. Y'all take care.
All right.
You too, brother.
Everybody, we will be right back. All right, we are back. Thanks for
We are
sticking
back.
around. It's been a little bit of a crazy evening, so we're glad everybody's hanging out. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, so I have some fun discoveries this week. I don't know about fun, but they're cool ones. I'm excited about them.
Are they not fun?
They're not like, oh, this is so fun. It's more like, oh, that's interesting.
Until you bring a discovery where I say that, I'm going to be disappointed.
I don't think I've ever heard you say anything with that amount of
I don't-
exuberance.
Or like taking my voice like an octave higher.
I love how last week when we sounded like chipmunks, which I'm actually curious if we do right now. Give
we
me
should
one
check
second. I
that.
need
It's
to
way
listen
too
to
late.
this.
It's way too late. If it's happening, it's happening. There's no like we would be past the point of
No, we don't. We don't sound like chipmunks for the first time.
okay.
Well, not for the first time, but this week, thankfully. But I love how my wife and my kids were like, "Daddy, you sounded like a chipmunk," but Zach, you sounded normal.
Yeah.
Like what? We both did.
Yeah, I thought I sounded like a chipmunk too. It was ridiculous. I don't know what the issue was. I don't know if Bad Internet can do that.
It was something. Something made it happen that way. All right, so let's write down our order of operations. What is your first one, Zach?
Fork knife.
Oh, man.
We're talking about this thing. Apparently, it's like a big thing.
Oh, yeah. It's the only thing with having something to drink when you're podcasting is I constantly have to burp.
Yeah.
What's your second one?
Let's do. Okay, so I have this ridiculous face shield we can talk about.
Ridiculous face shield.
And I also have a bonus one if we want to fill some time about everyday products we're using wrong.
We might want to do that this week. I don't know. We'll see.
And no band this week because the guys I was talking to for this week are one of them is in the studio helping record Under Oath's new album.
What?
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. I still like Under Oath. I listened to the new stuff and it was still pretty good. I liked it. All right, what is your bonus one again? I'm going to go ahead and put it in.
Everyday products we're using wrong. Are you talking to Kirk? Are you telling Kirk to drop the mic? Or are you talking like literally drop the mic? Okay. Nailed it. Yeah, it should be. I have a couple like extras if we need them.
All right. Oh. It says, no, Zach, you dropped the mic. This dude is recording Under Oath.
Yeah.
You were like name dropping.
Yeah,
bro.
that is kind of like name dropping. But it's not actually for me. It's somebody that I was going to talk to. So I'm name dropping for someone else. No, I thought it was interesting. I didn't know Under Oath was making new music.
Yeah, they just came back together like a year and a half ago. They like kicked it back off in Tampa, and I wanted to go, and I missed it. It was like the same week that I missed the Amber Lynn concert when they were leaving, when they were breaking up, which now they're back together. But whatever. Oh, we're missing that right now. Under Oath is doing one of their live streams.
Yeah, there's a lot of live streams happening right now that we're
Yeah,
missing.
because we're live streaming.
Mm-hmm.
No place I'd rather be, though.
We're being pretty time efficient. It feels like it's like we're running late, but we're not. It's just we've recorded a lot.
Yeah, it feels like we've been recording for a long time because we have been recording for a long time.
100% we have been. Feels like
Right,
old podcasts.
I am ready now. So I'll introduce us, and then you jump into Fork Knife. I have all of this in the Discord, so if you want to look at the order.
Okay, let me pull that up real quick. Okay, gotcha.
All right, let me hit the record button on the Zencaster. Mine still says running health check. Oh, now we're good, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, cool.
My camera's not focusing, which is weird.
Yeah, you are a little bit out of focus. And normally you're very focused. Or in focus.
Yeah, that's the problem with the automatic focus. Is sometimes it'll go out, but it should be fixed.
There you go. Looks good now. All right, let's give it 10 seconds. Okay. Welcome to the Other Discovery Show, the bonus show from the Podcast Discovery Show. That's about all of the other things we've discovered throughout the week. It's not about podcasts. I'm Kirk.
And I'm Zach. And I honestly discovered this from your children, but I think we need to talk about it. Fortnite is in the middle of some heated drama with Apple, what do they call it? The App Store. And then also the Google Play Store. So they're going against the big guys. And there's a lot of weird stuff happening around it. Like, first of all, they also showed me that on Fortnite, you can watch this video that is literally a pretty much shot-for-shot remake of the 1984 trailer, where it's like essentially them fighting back against the man. And it's like, I am not sure that... Okay, so let's back up. What has happened is Fortnite is no longer available on the App Store or the Google Play Store. And so this game is obviously still enormous with... I feel like it might be being mean, but it's mostly kids, I feel like. And that's fine. It's just I feel like it's mostly kids.
I've been listening to a lot of Reply All, and both of them play a lot of Fortnite, apparently. Or at least they used to, which is nuts.
There was a time when it was wider spread. It was really, really popular, and I think that it's just dropped a little bit. You know, people have switched to other BRs and stuff that were looking for other stuff. But it's still a very popular game. They still make a ton of money, but not being able to have it on mobile devices is interesting. So it's not available on the two biggest app platforms. And the reason why is because Epic Games decided they didn't want to pay anybody's stupid surcharge fee. They didn't want to pay either of those app stores to have microtransactions on the store. And so they literally sent a message or an email to the executives saying that they don't want to pay it. And then what they did was they completely subverted the App Store. So instead of buying the in-game currency is called V-Bucks. So instead of doing that through the App Store, you were able to do it through Epic Games. You're able to do it through Fortnite itself at a discount. And so that breaks terms of service. That is breaking terms of service with both Google and Apple. And so both of them have kicked them off of the platform. And then what Epic tried to do is they said they're going to make their own app store, and they want it to be available on the Apple App Store. And they're like, no, it wasn't a hard decision for them. But yeah, basically, as soon as you try to cut their platform out of the process, you are in violation of terms of service if you're doing microtransactions. So
there definitely is some I don't know if you're looking at an article or anything, but there's definitely some hypocrisy in a way or something. I don't know the right word, but there's a lot of apps that are allowed to not do the same terms of service, that are bypassing it, that Apple and Google are allowing them to.
Are you sure about that?
Yeah, I think Amazon's one of them.
I mean, yeah,
Because
Amazon.
you can make all of these purchases using the app, and I read one of the articles and it named a few of these companies that you're allowed to make purchases, and Apple and Google make zero money off of it.
Yeah, it sounds like Epic did not sign a good contract with either of these either of these app stores. Then,
so it's one of those things where like,
and I wouldn't call it hypocrisy. They signed a contract that had terms of service that they blew up.
My kids were like, "Well, I don't like Apple anymore," and I'm like, "It's not really them. It's Epic that's trying to make."
No,
and,
like, well, and yeah, Epic's just trying to make the money. Yeah.
And I'm like, they're probably still making more money on that 20% discount on V-Bucks than they were paying to Apple.
Yeah, that would be my guess. So, like, but it's just this whole interesting thing because then you get all these weird side things happening. So right now, you can buy an iPhone that has Fortnite installed for 4 times the price that it should be sold on eBay. Like, people are selling old phones just because they have Fortnite on it on eBay. Old phones. Like, you should not buy this.
I should have downloaded Fortnite.
You really should have. You could have just sold your phone to some dum-dum who wants Fortnite really bad on their phone. And
my kids keep asking me, like, no, you can't, because then you're going to want my phone all the time. You cannot download Fortnite on my phone.
Wait, you can't, right?
Now you can't, but
yeah.
I could have.
See, now you have an excuse. Like, nope, no Fortnite. Sorry about that. I've tried to play like some like shooter type stuff on a phone and it's bad anyways. Like I don't know who that's for really. I mean, iPad maybe, I don't know. I couldn't do it. But it's just interesting that this whole thing is turned into shenanigans. I think it's very bold to act like you are the protagonist in 1984 because you broke terms of service on an app store deal. And it's just wild because everybody's freaking out. And it's funny because Epic is like flailing around, but Apple, they basically just said it's there. They can fix it. They can get back on the App Store anytime they want by like getting back on their terms of service. So the quote from Apple, and literally Epic has filed a lawsuit saying that essentially they have removed, delisted, or refused to list their app, and so that's essentially I think their very stretched reach for 1984 is they've been censored, I guess is their thought. And so Apple said, we very much want to keep the company as part of the Apple developer program and their apps on the store. The problem Epic has created for itself is one that can easily be remedied if they submit an update of their app that reverts it to comply with the guidelines they agreed to and which apply to all developers. So it's like, it's one of those things that I don't know what's going to happen. I don't play Fortnite, so it's not really that big of a deal to me, but it's just funny to see the amount of drama around this thing.
It is a lot of drama, and it was definitely trending all over social media and stuff, and it's still a big story, but it's pretty straightforward. They didn't follow their contract, so
signed a bad contract. They probably did find out that like Amazon Marketplace can do it without it, but
there's a few different apps. I don't remember which.
But Amazon is a different size company than Epic Games.
Yeah. Even if they were the biggest game in the world, which they probably at least one point were.
Oh, they definitely were.
Still not even close to.
Wait, which part is tied to Tencent? We just got in chat that it's deeper than I look into Tencent. I'm familiar with Tencent, but I don't know.
That?
Do they own Epic Games?
What's Tencent?
It's a Chinese like top level company. So you think this is kind of like you think that the Apple Store might have been kind of doing the same thing with like TikTok and yeah, I don't know. Who knows? There is kind of a push for some of the Chinese applications that they think could be data mining to be removed. Yeah, they do. They do make really popular stuff.
Interesting. All right, so I woke up this morning to a discovery that was direct sent to me from our old friend Brian. He's in the Podcast Discovery Club. So essentially, it's a discovery from somebody else, but they sent it to me, and I love it. It's terrifying, but it's very fascinating. This is an article about how thieves can copy a key by recording its sound. So basically, there's a university in Singapore that has research that shows that all a thief needs is a 3D printer and some sort of way to record the sound of your key going in a lock. And they can create a replica of your key. The method is dubbed, I don't know if it's Spiky or Spiky. I'm assuming Spiky, but it's SPI, then key. Works on what is known as a pin tumbler lock, one of the most common types of locks for homes. As the key slides into the lock, its ridges push 6 metal springs back pins into specific positions. And when they're aligned correctly, it opens the lock. And this is the key, the lock that everybody uses, basically. What's fascinating, Gizmodo points out, while a 6-pin lock has close to 330,000 combinations, the spy key method can narrow that down to just 3. An attacker could easily test these 3 to see which one works, and they can basically make a replica of your key, which is terrifying. And at first, it talks about, well, they have to be able to, listen to your lock and blah, 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 blah. The thing that is as well terrifying is all they would have to do. I mean, granted, these would have to be pretty sophisticated thieves, but there's a lot of things that use this kind of lock that has a lot of value locked behind it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's true. No, and did they talk at all about kind of like how they figured this out? Was this developed exclusively to do this?
It doesn't say how they found it, but it's this university in Singapore that was doing some sort of study, and they found that this is something that could be done. But they were like, well, the thief also needs to record the key sound from within 4 inches of the lock to get clear enough recording. Not an easy feat by any means. So you're like, oh, okay, I'm not worried about this.
Yeah.
Well, first, I'm not worried about it for me, but I'm like, no one's ever going to do this. But then the last paragraph is like, oh, never mind. However, the researchers suggest that malware installed on a target smartphone could be used to record the sound of the lock over and over for several days. And they're really doing the thieves' thinking for them by this point, aren't they? This is what the article says, because the university is basically telling the thief how to be able to do this. But yeah, I mean, if you want to get in somewhere and you're a thief that can put malware on someone's phone that can record, which would probably not be near as hard as it sounds like it could be. I've been listening to a lot of Reply All, and it seems very easy to hack people's phones, and it's terrifying. It's crazy, but someone could get into your house by just listening to your key going into the lock.
Yeah, I mean, I think that also if you have a security system, it's fairly easy in a way to do the same thing. You try and watch somebody put in their code. That's the thing. It's not something that you have to super worry about, because if somebody wants to break in, they're going to break in. They can literally throw a rock through your window too.
I listened to an episode of Reply All the other day about somebody that hacked into somebody's Snapchat, because apparently a thing is, if you have a very desirable username on any sort of social media, like they call them an OG account, like you got butthole at Twitter, or whatever, and someone wants that because they want to be twitter.com/butthole, they will hack your phone, steal it, and then sell it on the dark web for like thousands of dollars. It's pretty insane. But the way that they do it was even crazier, because basically they find out who your cell phone provider is, and they call the cell phone company and be like, "Hey, I lost my SIM card." They'll like get a burner phone. They'll be like, "I lost my SIM card. Can you port my phone number to this SIM card?" Blah blah blah, and they will. And that's how they would do it. And it was just literally just a phone call to the phone company, and they would get that person's phone, which then would have all this stuff. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's wild. But I mean,
These
Reply
like
All.
15-year-olds doing it.
Yeah, Reply All will make you terrified of all of your technology because it shows you the vulnerabilities, and that's a good thing. Because that one about phishing sounds funny too.
Yeah.
So I saw a really weird thing this week, and it's called BioVisor. I'm gonna throw this in chat so everybody can check it out, and I want to hear how everybody thinks that whether they would use one of these. So we have all kind of gotten used to, and me and Kirk talked about the other day, that literally I went into the gas station the other day, and it feels weird to go in without a mask at this point. I'm so used to wearing a mask, it felt weird. And this takes it to the next level. This company, and they have a very successful Indiegogo campaign that they have funded this thing. They have raised already almost $1 million on Indiegogo.
Is this guy at Epcot?
It does look like he's at Epcot, doesn't it?
It's
selling
not, but it looks like...
what's called the BioVisor. And the BioVisor looks like you're wearing a spacesuit. It 100% looks like just the top half of a spacesuit.
Just the top half of a spacesuit, basically.
And what it is it's personal protective equipment that has air purifier. It has like fans on the back. It has batteries. It has literally those little side things you see on there have reversible gloves in them. So if you need to like touch your face, you like stick your hand into the thing and like can scratch your face. And I think that it like folds up, but it lasts 8 hours on a charge, all the fans and everything. It's like, it keeps the airflow good. It's supposed to not fog up. And it is just, and I mean, it's also an N95 air filter. So this is also effective against viruses. Unlike like if you see somebody just with like a hardware store mask on, that's more for everyone else. So they're not coughing all over everything. This is actually like a medical grade air purification, and literally they're sold out right now. They don't get back onto having some in stock until the end of September, and their half price pre-order price is $250, which honestly that's honestly less than I thought it would be.
No, if you look at this thing, you'll get it. I mean, it looks preposterous, but at the same time, I kind of want one. It looks amazing.
No, I mean, somebody could sneeze on your face and you would be unaffected. But also, the first time I saw this, I was thinking of the scene in Rocket Man where he sneezes from inside his spacesuit. And that's what I don't want to happen, because your little like reversible gloves will not save you. It's gonna just be messed up in there.
This thing looks crazy, but also amazing.
Would you wear this thing?
I think I would. It's I kind of want one now. I would look like an idiot, but I feel like everyone would also wish they had one.
Except for, I mean, there'd be a group of people that would call you a sheeple for wearing one. But honestly, it's pretty crazy looking. And I mean, you got your Halloween costume already. You could go from like somebody from Outbreak or something like that. You know, I feel like that does look like what they wear in like when there's highly contagious like Ebola victims or something. You know, they wear that type of heavy protective gear. But it's just crazy
I shared
that
the wrong link in the other stuff. I was trying to share that link in not just the Twitch, and I shared something else.
Are you Twigs? Are you saying that you feel like people could sneak up on you, or that you could sneak up on people?
People could sneak up on you because you can't see behind you. I'm pretty sure.
That definitely. And I mean, there's like fans. You're in like a space suit. Yeah, you wouldn't hear anything. I feel like it would be weird. I feel like it would be super weird.
It does seem weird.
And would you like bonk your head on stuff all the time? I feel like you can get a lot of like practical gags out of wearing that thing.
Hey, I would finally be a normal height.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like it makes you easily like half a foot taller. I mean, you would look like an
Exactly.
alien or something. You'd look like an astronaut. So, I mean, if that's what you're going for, a tall astronaut, don't let your dreams be dreams.
So I found this article, and today I learned it's not an article, it's a Wikipedia about this guy. And at the surface, it seems okay. I've heard this before. The whole idea that geniuses are not born, they're made. You have people, you've heard people say it, and whatever. This guy, Laszlo Polgar, and I don't know how to say it correctly because I think it's Hungarian. Um, this guy put it to the test, and he took it to such a different level that it's kind of nuts. So he's a psychologist and a chess teacher. So he kind of already was, into chess for some reason. But
into chess for some reason. I don't know. It's weird.
But he had this concept that geniuses were not made. I mean, they were made, not born. And he experimented on his own kids. But he wasn't married or anything when he had this idea.
Oh, wait. So he played the long game? He's like, I'm going to make some geniuses, but there's a lot of steps that I have to go through.
Exactly. Polgar studied intelligence when he was a university student. He later recalled that when I looked at the life story of geniuses during the student years, I found the same thing. They all started at a very young age and studied intensely. He prepared for fatherhood prior to marriage, he reported to People magazine in 1987, by studying the biographies of 400 great intellectuals, from Socrates to Einstein. He concluded that if he took the right approach to child rearing, he could turn any healthy newborn into a genius. And in 1992, he told the Washington Post, "A genius is not born, but is educated and trained. When a child is born healthy, it is a potential genius." Then he started to basically reach out to different women. He basically had this courtship with this Ukrainian foreign language teacher, and he told her what his concept was, and he wanted to try it on his own kids. And they came with an agreement. They ended up getting married, but she knew ahead of time, that he wanted to do this.
I guess that's good if he's going to go like crazy.
And so he had 3 daughters. He homeschooled them, and he primarily taught them how to play chess. Like, that was the thing. He's like, I'm going to teach them to be the best chess players in the world. So him and his wife both taught their children at home, and they didn't know at first what they were going to try to make them be geniuses at. They tried mathematics or foreign languages. They landed on chess. So we could do the same thing with any subject. If you start early, spend lots of time, and give great love to that one subject, is what his concept was. I want to put it this way. Long story short, this is a really good article. I mean, it's a Wikipedia, so there's a bunch of facts and stuff. But long story short, 3 girls, all 3 of them ended up being the top 10 chess players in the world. One of them became the best in the world for over 20 years. To the point where in where was it? 2008, which just kind of blows my mind. The world's highest ranked female chess player for nearly 20 years, she became the second best woman chess player in the world. No, that was his. One became the best. The other one was the second best, and the other one was like 6th best.
I didn't really realize there was divisions of like sex on chess.
Yes, because the one that was the best in the world was the first woman ever to qualify for the men's world championship, and in 2008, and they still denied her to participate.
Stupid.
Which is crazy. It's so stupid. Why would there need to be a male and female division in chess?
Okay,
so
probably
stupid.
because chess is so old that it has like real stupid old laws in it. Like, like the rules are antiquated.
It's probably. But apparently they've been interviewed and stuff because they talk about the Guardian and People Magazine and Washington Post because they've guessed, it's famous. It's a famous story. I'd never heard it before, but it's a famous story. But they talk about how you would think that these girls would kind of be a little weird because they were homeschooled and
just
only
played chess all the time
with their parents and each other only. But that all of these girls seem very well, like, adapted to regular interactions with people and everything like that. And one of them is a housewife and does interior design. The other one still does chess, but that they're actually more apt to interact with people at chess tournaments than other chess players.
I mean, I could see that. Honestly, it does give me the mental image of someday I hope she has granddaughters, and one day some boy comes over and she's like, hey, you want to play chess? And he thinks he's smart, and he gets destroyed by this girl's grandma because she is just a sleeper pick at being amazing at chess. No, it's crazy. Okay, if you could have picked for yourself what to be a genius at as a child, what would you have chosen?
I think it would be an instrument. Like, I would want to be like a savant on an instrument.
Oh, yeah, definitely instrument.
An amazing...
I'd be okay with piano or guitar.
I was going to say guitar, but violin's really cool too. Like, when someone's amazing at a violin, it's nuts. Like, it's beautiful. It's otherworldly. So, I think it would be an instrument.
Me too. But yeah, it's crazy to think about that because you always hear like the nature versus nurture of things, and there's also like that whole idea that how many people have not had any access to even basic levels of education to find how genius they are, So it really does. It's really interesting to hear kind of somebody who not only tried to prove that you could do that, but tried to do that with his own kids and like literally talked to his wife. It was literally planned and executed on, and it's like, okay, he
had a theory in college, and then he made an agreement with a woman that he's like, hey, let's have kids, but I'm telling you ahead of time,
I'm gonna try and make them geniuses.
I'm gonna try to make them geniuses. I have this theory, and we're gonna put it to the test. And of course, at first he got a lot of flack and stuff, but then people thought he was a genius for doing it because it worked.
They're like, oh my, he did it.
If it wouldn't have worked though, and his girls couldn't say words but could play chess amazing, then I'm sure
everybody would look on that differently. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean that's wild. Okay, I have one more thing that I've discovered this week that you need to know about because there was a couple of these that blew my mind. So I saw this dumb like clickbait article, as soon as it's like a long listicle about like, oh, you've been doing this, it's like, okay, yeah, but some of these did blow my mind. Okay, Tic Tacs, I always like try to pour them in my hand. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to open it and tip it on its side, and it'll literally pour one out onto the door.
I've seen that.
They designed it to do that. The one, okay, underneath your oven, the place where you put all your baking sheets, that's a warming drawer. It's not supposed to just hold all your extra oven stuff.
Been doing that wrong forever.
Yeah, same. You were supposed to store peanut butter upside down because then the oil disperses throughout and it doesn't form on top.
I didn't know that.
If you are using a flat plunger, like the one that's just flat and doesn't have the extension on it, you are using a sink plunger on your toilet. The one that you're supposed to be using like literally like fits into the toilet part, the bottom part. That's for your sink. It's for a flat surface. Chinese takeout containers are made to fold out. They don't just fold up because that's the way they are. They fold out so that you can eat it like it's a plate and then fold it back up and take it away.
What? I did not know that at all.
Yeah, you know those little white
Yeah, like the
boxes?
sides
Yeah,
have
you can
flaps. You
unfold
can
them and it
unfold
folds
those.
out. It's a plate. Then you can fold it back up and take it away.
Did not know that.
Yeah, amazing. There's a there is a straw holder on every Coke can. That little gap in the tab is so you can stick a straw in there and it won't float out of your soda. Some of these we do know. And then also a lot of saucepans, if they have a little hole on the end, that's not just so you can hang it up. That's so you can stick your spoon in it, and it'll literally hold your spoon up over your pot.
I've seen similar articles like this, and there's a few things like that one I started doing because I read this or something like this. I've seen the Tic Tac one. I haven't done it, but
I never have Tic Tacs.
the one that blew my mind is the takeout container. That's amazing. I got to do that.
Yeah, it makes me want some Chinese food.
Yeah. Also, I mean, now I think a lot of people know it, but I didn't ever know that on your gas pump thing or your gas gauge that there's an arrow on which side the thing's at, which side
Your actual place where you can fill up, the
Yeah.
door is.
there's a little arrow right next to the symbol for the gas pump, and I didn't know that for years. And then, like, I think a year and a half, 2 years ago, I saw an article like this, and they're like, "Hey, did you know this thing?" I'm like, "No."
Yeah, I mean, it's just there was like a couple of these that were interesting. In general, some were just like meh, but some blew my mind. But other than that. But yeah, I think that's everything for this week. If you want to check out a new album that is pretty awesome, Run the Jewels 4 is out, and it is insanely high energy, and it's good.
Run the Jewels. It's Josh's favorite, right?
It's a really great album, but you have to like very high energy hip hop. But yeah, thanks everybody for checking out the show. We really appreciate it. We have the Podcast Discovery Club on Facebook where you can join in and get some of these random discoveries throughout the week and get in touch with us. We have a Twitter. We have a Twitch channel. We have a YouTube channel. We have a page on Spotify. Any way that you can get in touch, if you Google search the Podcast Discovery Show, there's a lot of different options, but we'd love to hear from you, and we really appreciate you listening.
Thank you guys so much, and we will see you guys next week. All right.
All right, stream people, get ready. It's about to be game time.
It is about to be game time.
So we're gonna do a quick switcheroo. And Kirk, I was actually thinking, like, it seems pretty quick on like when the stream goes down and then back up, it kind of picks it up. I kind of just want to put it on Be Right Back, and then you just start it and see if it like will just take over. You know what I mean? Because there's no downtime and they won't have to like.
I did see the game, Twigs. Are you wanting us to try to play that tonight?
What in Discord?
Mm-hmm.
I did not see it yet. I haven't been on Discord at all today.
I have seen people play it, and it did look fun. It looked like a really fun group game. It's called. Dang it, where is it? It's in general. Among Us. If we have enough people. I don't know if we have enough people. Who all is availables?
I mean, Josh was in here earlier, right?
Mm-hmm. If you can corral, I'd be down. It's like we have to pay for it, right? It's like $5, something like that. Let's see what it is right now. Yeah, $4.99.
It's called Among Us, and I'm guessing Steam.
Yep, Steam.
So yeah, we're going to get ready for some games, and we will be right back. We're going to see if we can just switch it over without the stream dropping, but if not, we're going to be right back. Thanks everybody for checking out the stream for sure. And we're going to be back and playing some video games here very shortly.
Yep. Hey, it worked, by the way. Can you hear me?
What? They let you take over?
Yep. It's already on the things, and I didn't close it. It's got the countdown.